Hey everybody, this video is going to be about appliances. Have a look at this dryer here. We'll be talking about it in a moment, but first I'm going to talk about what I currently have right now. So this washer and dryer set came from my grandmother's old house. She had moved into a different house on her property. It was a mobile home, because the mobile home that these were in was just not in good condition. It was a 1980s single wide, and unfortunately mold had gotten to it. And over the years, the condition of the home just got worse and worse. And there was a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture in the home. Not to mention had mice and stuff like that in there as well. So these sat in there, not used for probably about 6 or 8 years. Something like that. So they sat for all that time, and when I moved into this place, I was needing a washer and dryer. So we was able to get those out. And both of them were non-functional at the time because of the conditions they sat in. The washing machine fared a whole lot better. I was able to get it working with just a few fixes. The only thing that was wrong with it was the tub brake was seized, and I was able to unseize it and get it working, and had to replace the agitator dogs in it. This is a Kenmore 90 series. It's made by Whirlpool. It's a Whirlpool direct drive. Probably one of the best washing machines ever made. They're pretty easy to work on and pretty dang reliable. Let's look inside of it. So this one here is working fine. The dryer was, as you may visually see, the dryer experienced a much tougher time. You can see lots of rust on it. Not sure what caused all the rust aside from the moisture, but yeah, it's pretty bad. This thing was infested with mice. There was all sorts of insulation from the home inside of it that mice had carried in and made a mess. It had made a nest in. Yeah, it was bad. And of course, in this video, you're going to hear me talk about why it's a good idea to visually inspect used appliances that you don't know the history of before you plug them in and try to use them. Which I will be doing that with this dryer in this video. So, pulled the panel off the back of this thing, and of course saw all the mouse infestation, but also saw some chewed wires. Luckily, they weren't any of the wires that carried power to the motor or the heater element, but it was the wires that went to the start button over here, and I had to completely redo those. And once those were done, the dryer was functional. It actually would run, although it never sounded the best. I think the belt that's in it's probably on its last leg. Maybe the glider pads probably are too. Let's look inside of it. But yeah, when you have a full load of wet clothes in there and you go to start it, it does sound a little rough there for a bit. But it has dried my clothes for the past about 3 years. At first, the automatic dry would not work because the cycling thermostat was stuck shut or stuck closed. So the only thing that would cut off the heat would be the high limit thermostat. So I replaced that with one I scavenged off of my parents' dryer when they replaced their dryer years ago. I scavenged some stuff off of it before they took it to the dump. And I happened to have the cycling thermostat installed in this one, and all was well for a while. But then it seemed like this thing took longer and longer to dry clothes, despite having no restrictions and airflow or nothing like that. And I was like, okay, I'm thinking serious about replacing this thing. Well, lo and behold, last December, when I was doing a building tour of a building that's about to get demolished over on CubeComp MTDX, the video will probably be posted sometime in February or March, I happened to spot this dryer in one of the rooms behind the auditorium. And it was just sitting there with a washer and a refrigerator. The dryer was already unplugged, like it hadn't ever been hooked up. It was just sitting there. Of course, it is a used dryer, obviously. It does show signs of use, but it is overall, from what I can tell, in better shape than that one. Much better condition. So I asked around some contacts I know in that area. And ultimately it said they was going to get trash, and welcome to have it. So picked it up this evening and brought it home, and here we go. So the dryer, by the way, is a Roper, which is made by Whirlpool, which is why they look so similar. The Roper is just a cheap version of a Whirlpool appliance. It's a cheaper version. And if you look at this one, even just the controls, you can tell. This one, you can adjust the heat pretty easily, whereas on this one it's all built into this one timer. So, like for example, you would have high heat, low heat, and you can only use time dry with low heat. And the timer only went for like 30 minutes, which is not even enough time to do a load of clothes. So yeah, I don't understand the logic behind that. That's ridiculous. But you can see this one, the timer goes up to 70 minutes, which is more common I've seen on dryers. This one even offers an end of cycle signal and wrinkle shield and all that stuff. But overall, mechanic wise, they're practically the same thing. Here's the lint filter. Lint filters come out exactly the same way. That's one thing that has not changed much as far as appliances goes, is dryers, especially electric dryers. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot right now and look at the Whirlpool dryers, and they will visually be almost identical to this one, or that Roper. So for example, if I open this up, you can see even this one offers a much bigger opening and offers more of these, whereas this one has like one, and these two things here. So when I go to spin this, that's what it sounds like. But right away, this one, compared to that one when I first got it, feels noticeably better. It glides a lot better, at least. If you look inside this one, sorry, let me get my flashlight so you have some better light here. If you look inside this one, and you look inside that one, you'll notice they're identical. Or at least, for the most part. Not exactly identical, but they're pretty similar. So anyways, I figure it's going to get started on this dryer here. So there's information if you're interested about this dryer. The model number and all that good stuff. Yeah, it's only this one shows to be rated for 28 amps. This one shows to be rated as 26 amps. I tell you, yeah, a 30 amp circuit breaker feeding this thing would always get nice and warm, and it's a brand new breaker. So yeah, this one was pushing the limits of a 30 amp circuit breaker. Now, the breaker wouldn't get hot or anything, it just would get warm. And the previous one would trip. I had to replace a breaker in this house for the water heater and the dryer because they were getting weak and tripping well under their rated spec. I don't know the age of this dryer. I wish I did. Maybe one of you guys on here could tell me just from the model. Now, of course, I mean, I could look it up later on. I'll probably look this up before this video goes online. Alright, so let's get started. For those who are wanting to see me work on this thing. Okay, so to start out, I'm going to go ahead and pull off some panels here. First, let's take a look at the connections here for the power cord. Because we will have to change out this power cord. Because the one that I have, the one that plugs, the way the plug is over there is a 4 wire, and this is a 3 wire. So instead of having L1, L2, neutral and ground, it just has L1, L2 and ground. So yeah, those look to be changed. We'll have to change this out for the other one. But primarily right now I'm mostly concerned about just getting the thing cleaned out. Try to keep this cord out of the way. What I'm going to do is I want to just visually inspect this thing, make sure there's nothing wrong visual wise, and get the vacuum cleaner out and get this lint out of here. This is something I recommend doing every once in a while with your dryer, because of course lint is very flammable. Trust me, I use lint to start my wood stove, and it makes a great fire starter. You don't want to start a fire in your dryer. And the panel should come right off. So I must say that this inside of this one looks a whole lot better than the one I have now. Yeah, when I took the back off the other dryer, I was greeted with lots of random pieces of insulation and this mouse droppings and everything else. It was awful. It was freaking awful. I'm also going to try to go ahead and take off this panel here, so that way we can get access to the ducting that comes from the back of the drum to the fan, because lint likes to accumulate in spots like that. So what's nice is I after work on this other one, I pretty much know what to expect when I took the back off of this one. And while I'm in here, there's a nice little service sticker that tells you some important information if you're servicing a dryer. Now, I think this probably applies to both electric and gas dryers, but so if the heat thermal cutoff is open, so a dryer has a cycling thermostat, a high limit thermostat, and a thermal fuse. So if your thermal fuse is blown, don't just replace the thermal fuse. Replace the high limit thermostat and cycling thermostat and fuse. Now here it tells you to change the thermal cutoff in high limit thermostat. I would say change all three, because I mean there's a possibility that, for example, with that roper, the cycling thermostat was stuck shut, and apparently a service technician had serviced it at one point, because there was a little bag up inside here that had service documents, and the old, for some reason, they kept the old thermal fuse and high limit thermostat in there in a little bag. So the technician replaced the thermal fuse and the high limit thermostat, but did not replace the cycling thermostat. Which my grandma, I think she was old fashioned and just used a timed dry mode and never used the automatic dry. Because if she tried automatic dry, it just would simply not advance the timer at all. That's part of what the cycling thermostat does. That's how your automatic dry works. Alright, so let's see here if I can get this off. Usually it snaps right off. Now, let me pull the lint filter out. Okay, so we have a couple of Phillips heads there that have to come out as well. That's right. Let's see if the other one. The other one has those. Why? Yes, it does. Why did I not remember that? Okay. Now it should probably just come right out. Sorry if you didn't hear that. I said it comes right out. So if you look here, not sure why you're seeing this, but you see all this crap in here? Yeah, it's quite nasty in there. We have quite a few bobby pins hanging out and at the bottom down here. Yeah, let's look at that. We have, oh man, what a mess. And this is oh, have a look at that piece of a clothes hanger. So this is why it's a good idea. Now, if you're buying a used dryer that you don't know the history of, or you do know the history of, or if you already, of course, you already have an existing dryer you've been using for years and never cleaned out, you need to clean it out once in a while, because with dryers, they need air. With lint and stuff plugging up ductwork and stuff, they can't get air. What happens when you don't have air? The thing overheats. And that can be why your cycling thermostat fails and why your high limit thermostat and thermal fuse have failed. Because of lack of airflow. So, we're going to take out the nice vacuum cleaner and get this cleaned up a bit. So it's going to be some noise. Obviously we're dealing with a vacuum cleaner, so yeah. Let's go get it. So before I actually fire up the vacuum cleaner, let's get you a look inside this thing. This one isn't terribly bad, but yeah, I've seen much worse. Like that roper over there. I think my grandmother did not clean the lint filter every time like you're supposed to, and that's a huge no-no. You're always supposed to clean that lint filter after every cycle, because it's doing an important job. So you have a nice dusting of lint inside this entire thing. And what would be nice is if I could see, well, I could see the motor. But I think I think otherwise we're okay. We just need to clean it out. So here's inside the heater box. This is where the heater element is. This is where it's crucial that it's nice and clean, because those heating elements, they of course get glowing red hot, and that could easily start a fire. And again, that's why airflow is so important. Yep, the same kind of heating elements that are in the backup heat in the heat pump system I have. That's what they look like a giant toaster. Here's a look inside the dryer exhaust. And speaking of dryer exhaust, that's another thing that you should keep an eye on. Make sure it's not getting plugged up with lint and stuff like that. Clean it out once in a while. Don't let it clog up, because, yeah, as mentioned, airflow, that's important with your dryers. There's like bobby pins just laying down the bottom of this dryer. Okay, I'm going to have to use both my hands to get those out. And you can actually see little marks on the fan where they must have dropped in and grinded. It's a wonder, it's a wonder those bobby pins didn't stall this thing out. It is a real wonder. Okay, so I'm sorry, I know I'm talking so much, but yeah, get this cleaned out and everything. Enough of the talking, Nick. Enough of the talking. And that's what probably some of you guys behind the computer are saying right now. Just get on with it. Dadgummit. Okay, I will. So, pull this out of the way. I'll use my hand to get those bobby pins out of here. I had to use the famous those pliers. Yeah, I'm going to use the pliers to get those out. Okay, famous those pliers to the rescue yet again. I call these the famous those pliers because they've been featured in so many of my videos. Jeez. Yeah, guys, I can't stress it enough. Why it's so important to maintain your dryer. Okay, so I think I'll just yeah, I'm just gonna vacuum up that stuff. I ain't gonna put my hands in that. It's kind of gross. So what happens when you don't check your pockets after when you go to wash your clothes? Well, it's important to check your pockets. Yeah. Coins, bobby pins, you name it. Okay, about to use a vacuum cleaner, so we'll have some noise. Sorry about that, but it is what it is. So if you don't like the sound of vacuum cleaner, I recommend you turn down your volume. to kind of deteriorate a little bit on this one. Move the part of me hackle a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to cleaning up the inside of this and roll with and stuff. What I'm doing now is I'm reaching the filling around the cyclone thermostat. Everything feels fine there. So that's the cyclone thermostat. That's the high limit thermostat. Oh, excuse me. I think that's the high limit thermostat. Maybe some of the fuses down here, not sure. This one may have two high limit thermostats, I don't know. Okay, I was able to get a pretty good bit out of there. The only thing though is I wish I'd had easier access to the motor. And the way that Whirlpools were kind of put together makes it a bit more difficult to get to the motor. I can look in here and actually see where the motor's at. I can see spots that I hadn't got. It's just, yeah, accessibility is not the easiest on this thing for like getting access to the motor and stuff like that. I think the drum may have to come out of this one. I'm just trying to look and see. Actually, I think the front panel does come off. So we'll have to look into that, because I mean, it's not bad in here. It's just there's this fine coating of lint on just about everything. So now we'll go ahead and see if we can get access into this panel here. Okay, so here's a look at things. This is inside the control panel, which I didn't quite get on video. So there's still a little bit of lint left, but other than that, it's a whole lot better. At least I know what the inside of this thing looks like now, versus before I wasn't quite sure. Definitely nowhere near as bad as that ripper was. Yeah, it's amazing that ripper even still works. That's the thing about clothes dryers, is they're pretty simple in design. And this applies to pretty much all the different brands. I think electric dryers are probably the most simple of the bunch, because you're just dealing with circuits then. You're not having to deal with a gas valve and gas burner and all that kind of stuff. Personally, I'm not a real big fan of having a gas burner inside my clothes dryer. Not that electric's a whole lot safer, but so another thing I want to focus on is changing out that cord for a 4-wire, because as I may have mentioned already in the video, what I have in this place is a 4-wire. The outlet in the behind the dryer back there is a 4-wire, which has your L1, L2, ground, and neutral. You can see that this one has a 3-wire, which there's the only difference here is instead of having L1, L2, ground, and neutral, you just have L1, L2, and ground. And I would assume that with a 3-wire, the motor, which generally runs on 120 volts, is instead hooked from L1 or L2 to ground. You can see right here on the terminal box, the terminal plate, since we're using a 3-wire connection here, which do not touch these if your dryer is plugged in. You really should not have your dryer plugged in if you're working on it, by the way. Yeah, always unplug or at least turn off your circuit breaker. And I recommend turning off the breaker and unplugging. But you can see you have L1, L2, neutral, and because this is a 3-wire, the ground is hooked up to here instead of over here. I think on a 4-wire, the ground wire goes over to here, and you have your L1, L2, and neutral here. I'm going to look it up on Google just to make sure. But yeah, shouldn't be too hard to change out. I have to pull the rubber dryer out and get the cord off of it to swap over to this one. You know, while I'm at it, I might actually pull some stuff off the roper to save for parts, because the roper's going to be going to the dumpster. I'll probably be saving the heater box and maybe the motor and blower and stuff like that, but yeah. I'm not going to feature that in this video. Anyways, I'm going to take a break for now. We'll resume this in a moment. Okay, everybody, it's the next day. Now that I've got most of the lint cleaned out of the critical areas, such as the blower, the heater box, the duct, go from here to the blower, go ahead and put this thing back together. Because I can look inside here, and things look fine inside here, from what I can see. So I'm going to put this thing back together and change up this cord, and we'll test the thing, see how it does. Start by putting this panel back on. Now I'll go ahead and reinstall the duct going from the back of the drum to the blower. There's still a little bit of residual stuff in here, but I'm going to try to get that out. It's just, I think what's going to happen is when this thing starts up, it's going to suck it all out and blow it out the exhaust. So I can dump it out into the trash can or something. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and feed this in through here. Or try to. There we go. Have to get line this right. Go and use the 2 Phillips head screws to hang the thing into place. Okay, that's in. So we'll go ahead and continue driving the screws. I'm going to start a couple in various spots to try to make sure this whole thing is lined up properly. I think that's all for that. That leaves us with the back panel. Just double check myself, make sure I didn't miss any screws. Because I can't be good at that sometimes. Alright. I also vacuum this off once I get it back on the dryer. Be a little bit easier. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is it's a good idea to check on your connections, especially the ones feeding the heating element. Any of the wires that feed the heater, they all have spade connectors on them, and spade connectors are notorious for being hot freaking resistors over time. What I mean to say is, over time the connection gets bad. Sometimes you won't have a good connection, and when you're pulling 25 amps through that wire, things can get quite toasty if you're not getting a good connection. And this is, as mentioned, this is the same kind of heating element you'll find in a heat strip and an air handler for a heat pump or electric furnace. It's, they pull a lot of power, and yeah, it's something you gotta definitely watch out for. So make sure all the wires that feed the heating element and stuff are well secured. I mean, this dryer is full of spade connectors. I think most dryers are like that, actually. So I have to keep that in mind. Okay, so we'll carefully try to hang this all into place. And on this particular dryer, I'm going to start with this one screw because the hole is quite wide. I think I designed it that way so that way you can sort of start this one in. Well, not all the way though, but start to feed this a little bit. That way you can see it's keeping this thing on here for me. And we'll just start driving some screws. And this screw over here, I don't know if you can see, this one here, don't put a screw in there because that's actually where the electrical cover goes. And we gotta leave that off for now because we gotta swap the cord over from the other dryer. Okay, it leaves us with one screw, which is what we're expecting because we have one left over for the electrical connector. So, that brings us to pulling out the roper dryer, taking the cord off of it and swapping it over to this one, and sliding this one back into there, getting everything hooked up and test it out. But of course I will vacuum this, but I'm going to do it off video, so move on to the next step. And just to be on the safe side, we're going to switch off the breaker that feeds the dryer. Okay, so now we're looking at the back of the roper dryer. And it looks like my genius self put this back panel on across this one. So I'm going to have to probably, well, see what I can do. I might have to take this whole panel off here. Which doesn't really bother me anyway because I'm going to be pulling some stuff out of this thing once I confirm this one, the new one, works. Okay. So see if I can shimmy it out of there without having to take the whole panel off. Yeah, I want to take this whole panel off. Good job, Nick. Good job. We're all going to take the whole thing off. I'm going to have to take enough screws out to where I can get access to this thing a bit easier. In other words, I'm going to have to at least take the panel out a little ways. I'm sorry, it is getting kind of late. It's been a long day for me, but I need to get this done. But I'm kind of curious what the inside of this thing looks like after 3 years of me using it, which is not terribly a whole lot. Okay, so now we have access to the wire junctions. So in this dryer, the cord that it came with is a four wire, and its terminals look okay as well. Hard to see due to the lighting, but yes, I wonder because the environment this thing was put in, or at least it was exposed to over time. And not the craziest about these terminal blocks. Because let's say if something does get too hot and it melts or gets brittle, I mean, you have, of course, this is not plugged in, and the breaker's off. You have your L1, your L2, and your neutral. So this is 120 volts. This is 120 volts. Between these two is 120 volts, and between these two is 120 volts, and between these two is 240 volts. So, and they're on there really good, so that was good to see. So for the ground, we have a slightly different size bolt. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking loose these screws. You get these wires out of here. Go ahead and resecure this panel a little bit so that way you can better see what I'm doing. There. That's good enough for now. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm taking out these 3 screws. Yeah, I tell you guys, this dryer, it's been drying okay, except for I believe the cycling thermostat that I put in is kind of going out. But I did want to eventually change this thing out. This dryer has made me nervous from day one, due to the kind of conditions it ran. You know, it came out of, and now. I actually need to go and get that taken out, so let me go grab some sockets that fit that. Okay, I wasn't able to find a socket that fit, so we're going to use an adjustable wrench. Try to get off with that. Thing is, it's kind of in there a little ways, which is going to make it a little more difficult. Plus, it's been on there for who knows how many freaking years. There we go. Had to get it dead on. So here The ground wire inside the dryer hooks up, and also the ground wire coming from your cord hooks up in here as well. Okay, now we should be able to get our cord out of here. I think this cord probably came with this dryer. I'm not sure. I'm not actually not 100% certain on that. You know, I had seen that it mentions 3 or 4 wire connection. It's been a while since well, my parents, they bought a new dryer about, I don't know, what, 5 years ago, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember if they had to replace their cord, if it actually came with the cord or whatnot. Because it depends on the kind of connection you have in your house, whether you have a 3-wire or a 4-wire connection. Tell you this, it's a pretty stout cord. Okay, so that's out. We can go ahead and swap it onto the other dryer. Okay, so I try to get you a little bit closer view of this one. That way you can better see what I'm doing, because this is a bit more important. You want to know how to hook these things up if you've never hooked up one before. So need to grab our adjustable wrench, so that way we can unthread this bolt, which it was actually already loose to begin with. Well, you know. Okay, that's out. Put that to the side. Okay, so go ahead and thread this guy. Matter of fact, do it all the way. Pull this down and through. Now on this 3-wire cord, the ground is in the center. L1 is here and L2 is here. Now, as far as L1 and L2, it doesn't exactly matter which way you hook them up because they're 120 volts each. They're your separate 120 volt feeds. But you don't want to, you wouldn't want to hook this over to here because that would actually, you would be feeding the chassis of your dryer 120 volts. And that would not be good. So be careful. This cord, the ground wire has stripes on it. Now the 4-wire, they're all conveniently labeled. So it's a simple matter of matching up the colors. So first we're going to take out the neutral and ground. Matter of fact, so we're going to take out these 3 wires, and of course, like the other one, they're in there extremely tight. I may have to use the cordless screwdriver to get those out. Because they are really in there. So yeah, with electrical connections, that's important. They have to be nice and secure, especially on something like this that's pulling a high amount of current. And we'll use this to try to break these loose. Even this can't get them loose. We'll have to step up to the DeWalt. Yeah, they were in there big time. So now this will be going over here. But of course we'll be installing the corded ground wire as well, so we'll have to wait on that. In a way, I think this might have been easier if I had just left the back panel off. I really think it would. Yeah, we'll get to that. So I'd imagine L1 and L2 are probably on there just as tight. Oh yes. Okay, those two weren't as bad. But man, that neutral, it was really on there. Trying to use a drill to help get this thing out of there. Alright, so now the 3-wire cord is loose. Heck, it looks brand new. That's the difference between having a dryer sitting in an abandoned mobile home for several years versus in a nice, dry, low humidity building. And these 3 terminals look perfectly fine, no discoloration. That's good to see. Okay, so now we'll feed the 4-wire cord in through the hole. One thing I should mention is it's important to inspect your cord. If you notice anything that feels loose or if there's any discoloration on the terminals, replace the cord. It's a definite must. Otherwise you could end up with potentially a fire. because that circuit breaker is not going to know when you have a poor connection. Generally, it will not trip just because of that. Now, if you have a newer house that has arc fault breakers, and you actually are having an arc, then yeah, it could trip, but better safe than sorry. Alright, so now it's a matter of matching up the 4 wires. We'll thread these in with this little screwdriver. I'm also going to check them with the my regular screwdriver as well. Yeah, that little blue corner screwdriver does a good job of threading stuff in tight. It's just what it was, that center screw was in there so tight that it could not break it loose. And again, guys, it's important when you're dealing with electricity, when it comes to connectors, make sure they are well secured. Especially in an appliance like this, like a dryer, that pulls a lot of current. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and connect L2. Or actually, no, we'll connect neutral. Neutral goes in the center. Alright. Now, of course, don't freak out if your actual terminals move around, but you'll make sure that the connector from the wire is well secured with the terminal. And now we'll go into the black, which will be one of the 220 volt feeds. See, for you guys who are familiar with working on PCs and stuff like that, don't be confused when working with AC circuits, because this means hot, this means neutral, and this means ground. This typically means L2, at least in North America. For my international overseas viewers. Okay, now, matter of fact, I'm going to use, or I should have, from again, I should have used the hex bit that I have, because this is a whole lot more secure than a regular Phillips. They don't strip out near as easy, rather. Okay. And now we'll connect up the ground. Which goes right up here. And of course, now we have to stack the dryer's ground with the ground coming out of the cord. So, sorry if you can't see this too well. So I got the screw running through both screw terminals. And we'll thread it into here. Make sure this one's pretty decently tight. Now with the ground, of course, we'll want it good and tight as well, but it's not going to be as critical as your actual main wires here. Get that lint out of there. Okay, so the 4-wire cord is now installed. Now we just need to go ahead and install the cord keeper in there. Actually, it was in the other way. They're both the same. I just want the screws to be facing downward. And of course, if you didn't already know, the purpose of this here is to keep the stress off of these. That way they're not flexing around like crazy anytime the dryer gets moved. Okay, the cord is good and secured. Now I'm going to install our last cover. Okay, so after installing that dryer cord, this one here, I got to thinking after looking at this plug, I'm not sure if I want to use this. Because you notice all the green on it? I think that's corrosion. And also, these don't feel particularly tight. Not as tight as they should, I think. So, went to Lowe's and picked up a new dryer cord. Cost them $20-something, but feel much better having a brand new cord on something that pulls this much power. I did shoot video of me installing it, but unfortunately, before I even got to the point where I was installing it, the battery in the camera went dead. But I did capture the part showing the cord that I bought, so I'll go ahead and show that footage in the video. So, anyways, you got to see me pull the old cord off and install it onto the newer dryer, so you would pretty much, it's the same process. You get the idea. You can see how it's gotten, it's the green here and here. And can move this around quite a bit, and I'm like, no thank you. So went to Lowe's and picked up a brand new one. $20-something later. Yeah, I think some of the stuff like this at Lowe's is a bit priced up. Although this is a stout filling cord. Okay, everybody, I got the dryer slid into place and got the breaker turned on. Yeah, the interior light bulb's probably burnt out. That's pretty typical. So, it's time to test it. I don't have any wet clothes yet, but let's go ahead and make sure it works. I'm going to set it to auto dry, and moment of truth. Let's see. Got the temp on, I think, regular. Alright, let's start it. And it runs. And the heat's getting warm. And as I figured, it sounds just like the other dryer running, except in better condition. Doesn't sound nearly as bad when starting up versus the old one. And if we peek back here, can't see it on this one, but on the other one you can actually see, right off the heater going. That was me. You can't see it on this one. Alright. Uh-oh, that's not good. It's supposed to shut off when you open the door. Yep. Not supposed to behave like that. So that means this switch here is faulty. So we'll have to replace that. But it's working. So I think it wraps up for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Well guys, that's it for this one. But it doesn't have to be. There's plenty more videos on the channel to check out. Also, if you liked the video, please click the like button. And if you absolutely hated it, there is the alternative button as well. But yeah, please subscribe to the channel. I definitely appreciate it. And remember to click the bell so that we get notified of all updates. Also, if you're interested in things aside from computers and technology, check out my second channel. It's Cube Comp MTDX. Over there you'll find videos about weather, elevators, bicycling, and pretty much whatever else I figure out to upload. So yeah, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you for your support.